Support for Anderson Cooper 360 comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Home plays a big role in your life. That's why Quicken Loans created Rocket Mortgage. It lets you apply simply and understand the entire mortgage process fully, so you can be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/AC360. Support for AC360 comes from GoToWebinar, a trusted webinar platform with over 55,000 customers who have hosted over 2.3 million interactive web events to connect with their audiences. For more, visit gotowebinar.com/podcast. AC360 did not air on CNN today. For this podcast episode, we are bringing you an hour of CNN coverage from earlier in the day.
It is a Friday afternoon. You are watching CNN here with me. I'm Brooke Baldwin. I really appreciate it. For the first time in 15 years, the President of the United States held no end-of-the-year news conference, but he did take a couple questions from members of the media before jetting off to Florida to begin his Christmas break. Here was the President moments ago greeting supporters after arriving there at West Palm Beach, shaking some hands, taking some photos before he spends his holidays with his family at Mar-a-Lago. As I said, he did talk to reporters earlier while signing into law his historic tax cuts. This is the most substantial set of tax reforms this country has seen in 31 years. President Trump says he doesn't plan on trying to sell the cuts to the American people. This despite the majority of people CNN polled oppose those tax reductions, which will add $1.5 trillion to the deficit over 10 years.
I don't think we're going to have to do much selling. I think the corporations that are giving billions and billions of dollars away to their workers, and many more are coming, I think that's really what's selling this, maybe better than anybody could, including myself. But I think come February, when they open their checks and they see, wow, what happened? I have a lot more money in here. I think that's really going to be something very special.
Let's go to Boris Sanchez. He's live in Palm Beach there near Mar-a-Lago. And so, Boris, it was interesting, how the president was saying, I was planning on signing this, early in January, but he was watching TV and he was irked, right, about how some people were saying he wasn't keeping his promise of giving this gift to the American people by Christmas. And so what did he do? He signed it.
That's right, Brooke. There was some speculation about how he would handle the signing of this historic tax bill. Just a few days after the president said that he doesn't watch that much television news, he admitted that it swayed him to signing this bill today, a symbolic gift to the American people just before Christmas. He says he was keeping a promise. Before he signed that tax bill, he also signed this continuing resolution to keep the government funded through January 19th. Included in that stopgap is an extension to funding for CHIP, a children's health insurance program, as well as a $4 billion missile defense spending plan. Not included in that CR, though, is a solution to the issue of Dreamers and their legal status, something that Democrats were seriously hoping for in negotiations when it comes to funding the government, as well as an $81 billion recovery plan for areas that were badly hit by hurricanes earlier this summer. Those things lawmakers will likely focus on early in the new year. And the president, in that short interaction with the press in the Oval Office, added yet another one. He started talking about an infrastructure bill, saying that he believes there will be bipartisan support for it. Listen to more of what the president said.
I really do believe, and I said on social media today, I really do believe we're going to have a lot of bipartisan work done. And maybe we start with infrastructure, because I really believe infrastructure can be bipartisan.
He also admitted that it likely would have been easier to start off his agenda by focusing on infrastructure because there appears to be some common ground there between Democrats and Republicans. The president was in the Christmas spirit, even with the press at one point during that get-together, offering the press pens that he used to sign the legislation into law. However, he did stress that it wouldn't just be Christmas spirit, eggnog, and golf during his time here in Mar-a-Lago. He told reporters that he was looking forward to working on issues on his agenda, including coming up with responses for any kind of North Korean aggression that may be on the horizon and issues pertaining to unrest in the Mideast. Brooke.
Got it. Boris, thank you. Boris Sanchez in Palm Beach. Let's take a deeper look here on the president's year ahead and the year that is now nearly behind him. With me now, Caitlin Huey-Burns, national political reporter for Real Clear Politics. Also with us, CNN political commentator and Democratic strategist Maria Cardona, and CNN political commentator Doug Heye, who is the former communications chief for the Republican National Committee. And so great to have you all on this Friday afternoon. And Doug, you first, just on the way in which the president, very honest with the American people, the way in which he described how, all right, he said he was going to sign this thing by Christmas and he was watching TV. P.S. We know he watches a lot of TV, and and he signed the bill into law today. What did you make of how he handled that? Do you give him credit for just following through and just doing it on the spot, or was it a missed opportunity to go into the country and maybe do it at a business and say, listen, this is about the people?
Yeah, I wish the president would have had a press conference. Obviously, like a lot of us, I wish he'd do more press conferences anyways. But I go back to earlier in the week when Sarah Huckabee Sanders kicked off her press briefing. And she did so by 90 seconds of talking about what the administration views as their key accomplishments over the past couple of years. Yeah, and, I might disagree with some of those. Maria would probably disagree with all of those. But I thought it was an impressive telling of what the administration's priorities were. And I think this is a missed opportunity for the president to be his own best advocate, to make the case one last time before the holidays, to have that cement in voters' minds. Because he ended this week, whether you like the tax bill or don't like the tax bill, this was an impressive accomplishment by the president and by Congress, something we haven't seen happen a whole lot, something with tax reform that hasn't happened in a generation. I would have loved to see the president out there making that best case and being his own best advocate. Well,
maybe he wasn't out there doing that, but I can tell you, watching him in the Oval Office, he did sit there and say he doesn't think he's getting enough credit for what he thinks has been a really big year, and cited some of those items on that list. Maria, I hear you chuckling.
Yeah, and you know what? He does desperately need to try to convince the American people that they have done a lot, because the American people ain't buying it, number one. Number two...
You think he needs to sell it?
Yes, he needs to sell it, because first of all, I don't know if it would work, because I don't think he has that much to sell. I mean, there's a reason why he is at a record low approval rating. There's a reason why Republicans are at record low approval ratings. There's a reason why the generic ballot for 2018 midterm elections, Democrats are running away with it in double digits. The American people are not buying what this president and the GOP Congress are putting down as priorities. Doug talked about priorities, and that is exactly the problem. Let's look at their priorities. The last thing that they desperately wanted to get done to try to show that they could achieve something legislatively was a huge tax cut for millionaires and billionaires and the wealthiest corporations who have had record profits. Who did they not care about? The 9 million children who are about to lose their health insurance and whose families are desperate because they can't sleep at night. That right there is a stark contrast in what the priorities are for this Republican Congress, and it's not going to bode well for them in the midterm elections.
Hopefully for those 9 million kids and their parents, we know the funding for CHIP through the end of March. Hopefully they're going to re-up that for much, much longer. That has big bipartisan support. But Caitlin, just, listening to Maria talking about how America ain't buying it, when it comes to some of this tax plan. But what others may not buy, the president tweeted and reinforced that on this point of infrastructure. And he's saying essentially, I predict we're going to work with Democrats on my next big priority, which is infrastructure. Talk to me a little bit about why you think it's interesting that infrastructure is next on his list, and if that's a smart move. And then, Maria, I'm going to ask you if you believe him, but you first.
Sure. Well, Republicans are facing a very different political reality than they were heading into last year compared to this year, because they will be down one U.S. senator. Remember, Doug Jones from Alabama is going to cut into their margin next year. So it could be that tax reform is the last big Republican agenda item that they can get through before the midterms. On infrastructure, yes, there is always wide bipartisan support for infrastructure, but always the devil is in the details. We saw a lot of Democrats express support for the idea of tax reform before they got to the actual legislation, and no Democrat went over the aisle and signed it, which I think is one of the more interesting stories of this year politically, that no Democrat from red states, especially those states like West Virginia, Indiana, North Dakota, states that Trump won overwhelmingly, none felt the political incentive to cross the aisle and support anything with his name on it. We'll see if that's a big risk on their part, or a gamble, or if next year they might start seeing the tide turn a little bit. We do have a year till the midterm elections. elections, really. But looking at that generic congressional ballot, it's an 11-point difference at this point, mirroring 2006. Headwinds are certainly facing Republicans.
I want to ask a follow on that, but I was actually listening to you, Caitlin, handed this piece of paper, and we were talking earlier. Doug, I'm going to put this to you because we were talking off the top. Listen, we all wish, we all wish that the president talked more to the press, right? They're just a fact. And so what we're now getting from Jeff Zeleny, our senior White House reporter, is that apparently the president was eager to take questions and hold a news conference. I'm just looking at Zeleny's reporting, and hold a news conference to tout his accomplishments before leaving for Mar-a-Lago, but his advisors argued against it. They were eager to avoid him being besieged with questions about the Russia investigation and other distractions. This is according to two White House officials telling CNN. Doug High?
Yeah.
Smart move?
Well, look, obviously they want to avoid these questions that they've been trying to avoid for months. Anything about the investigation, anything that involves the word Russia is something the president and his team want to not just dismiss, but also discredit. That's the risk of doing any press conference. You can't control necessarily what questions you're asked, even if you control to some extent what outlets are asking the questions. But again, I thought this was a good week for the president. I think by and large, he's been much measured in the way that he's been tweeting less outrageous things, less self-created outrage du jours. I would have loved to have seen him go out on a high note, and really emphasize why he supports and why he pushed this package, especially given the good news, not just of reducing the corporate tax rate, but so many companies that we've heard just over the past day and a half that are giving $1,000 bonuses to their employees, which isn't just about the corporation, but about those employees because of this tax bill. He had good news, and I would have liked to have seen him promote it.
Maria, what do you think?
Well, I agree with Doug on the one hand, but on the other hand, he would have definitely gotten besieged with questions about the Russia investigation, and especially whether he's going to fire Robert Mueller. And he does not do well on the cuff. He does not do well in improvised situations, because he will say whatever is on his mind at that moment in time. And we all know that has not boded well for him or the Republicans. And in fact, I think it's one of the reasons why he has such a low approval rating, because people don't believe that he has the temperament to be president of the United States, because he does govern from the hip. In fact, he governs by cable news commentary, as he himself said this morning. He reacts to things he hears on television. I think people want a more measured president. I think people want a president who understands what the American people are going through and actually has a strategy moving forward. And the fact that his own advisors didn't want him to do a press conference, I think they also understand that he has no political strategy moving forward, and that it's up to them. So I think all of these things do not bode well going into a 2018 midterm election where the headwinds are against them and the wins are at the backs of the Democrats.
Maria, you got the last word. We're going to leave it. Hey, I'm not going to talk to all of you until next year. So I just want to wish you all happy holidays, Merry Christmas,
Brooke,
and Happy New Year. Thank you.
We'll see you next year.
And Doug, thank you all so much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Next here, a new CNN poll finds nearly 2/3 of Americans think the fight against ISIS is going well, but less than half are actually giving the president credit for that. Plus, the Hispanic caucus rips into Democratic leader Chuck Schumer for not taking a stand on the Dreamer program, more of a stand that they would have liked. And one of the members who really confronted him, Congressman Luis Gutierrez, will join me live to tell me about what happened in Schumer's office. And later, two former Miss Americas speak out about a series of incredibly offensive emails sent by the CEO of that pageant, their reaction to this Huffington Post reporting today, and how the Miss America organization is responding. You're watching CNN. I'm Brooke Baldwin.
Support for AC360 comes from GoToWebinar, the webinar platform that's hosted 2.3 million interactive web events with over 60 million views per year. GoToWebinar believes webinars are one of the best ways to interact with your prospects and customers, instead of business presentations or company websites. Turn your next presentation into a conversation with GoToWebinar. For more information, visit gotowebinar.com/podcast.
The Pentagon is accusing Russia of intentionally violating an agreement designed to prevent accidents in the skies over Syria. The accusations follow this recent encounter between American F-22s and Russian Su-25 jets that nearly resulted in a collision. With me now, our Pentagon reporter Ryan Brown and retired Rear Admiral John Kirby, who's a former spokesperson for the Pentagon and the State Department. So, gentlemen, good to see both of you. And just first, Ryan, in response, Russia's envoy to Syria, says it is time for the U.S. to basically pack up and get out. What do you know about this violation and potential fallout?
Well, Brooke, we're being told that the Russian military in Syria has violated this agreement multiple times in recent weeks, as many as 8 times a day in November,
Wow.
according to U.S. officials. Now, they've said that the number of violations has gone down as the amount of Russian activity in the area has been reduced. But both the U.S. and Russia maintain sizable military presence in Syria. The U.S. has some 2,000 troops there. The Russia has its own forces and aircraft supporting the regime of Bashar al-Assad. So while they're fighting different groups, they've kind of come into contact with another. This agreement, this deconfliction agreement, was designed to prevent any accidents. But the U.S. now is saying that Russia is intentionally violating the agreement. Previously, Secretary of Defense Mattis said the Russian pilots may have been making mistakes. These may have been accidents. But the Pentagon telling CNN very strongly that these incidences were not mistakes, and this is part of a concerted effort by Russia to break this agreement.
That's what I wanted to ask Admiral Kirby you about. Specifically, Secretary Mattis says it's unclear whether Russians were violating this, saying, quote, I don't expect perfection, but I don't expect dangerous maneuvers either. Keyword is intentionally violating airspace. Why would Russia be doing this?
To get the United States out of Syria, period. And what you're seeing, Brooke, in addition to these intentional violations and this tension along the demarcation zone and or line, you're also seeing out of Moscow political statements as recently as just yesterday, where Putin's spokesman is talking about how the United States has absolutely no role left in Syria, no business being there. They should just get out. And I think that's exactly what they're trying to ratchet up the pressure. This is classic Russian strategy. Ratchet up the pressure politically, ratchet it up militarily to try to get your adversary or the individual you're targeting to change their behavior. And the behavior they want is the United States out of Syria.
Good luck with that. On to this new polling from CNN. More than 6, this is on ISIS, Admiral Kirby, more than 6 in 10 Americans say the U.S. military action against ISIS is going well. Here are the numbers you can see for yourself. This is the most positive assessment since the U.S. began these airstrikes just 3 years ago. We know that Iraq, the president there has claimed victory, but is this positive shift reflected, in reality on the ground?
Yeah, I think it is, Brooke. I really do. I mean, if you just look at what's happened in the last year, ISIS has lost almost all of the ground that it once held in Iraq and Syria. I wouldn't say all, but almost all. And about half of that territory was lost in just the last 11 months. Of the 2.5 million people that have returned home in Syria, more than half of them returned home in just the last year or so. Now, I do think the Trump administration gets a little credit for this. They did loosen up delegation of authority to lower levels of the chain of command. They let commanders on the ground make more tactical decisions a little bit faster. That's part of this. Also, what's part of it is the momentum that was built before Trump took office. I mean, it was under President Obama and Secretary Kerry that this multinational coalition of now 74 nations was stood up and established and really started pounding away at ISIS's ground facilities, their ground capabilities, as well as their financing. So a lot of this is sort of momentum coming, in favor of the United States and the coalition over time.
Well, we keep hearing this, too, to your point at the top about, losing so much territory. And this is something the president touts all the time, decimating ISIS. But also in the same polling, 48% of Americans, so less than half, actually approve of the president's handling of terror overall. Why do you think that is?
I think that's because he tends to couch terrorism in religious terms, and I think this is the biggest that and the fact that he isn't really showing an honest effort to get at the root causes of radicalization. Look at his national security strategy that he just touted a few days ago. You won't find much in there about self-radicalization and getting at the terrorist narrative. It's mentioned, but not in any great detail, because they like to couch this as a religious conflict or a religious-based conflict, and I think that's turning a lot of Americans off. The second thing I'd say, Brooke, is that one of the reasons why people are still worried about ISIS, and they should be, is because ISIS has metamorphosed now into a radicalization and inspirational organization. Mm-hmm. So they don't have as much ground, but they are metastasizing to other places in the region and around the world, and they are trying to inspire self-radicalized individuals in Western countries, including the United States, to conduct attacks. And so there is a very real concern about that, and that is sort of the new ISIS we're dealing with.
It is that intangible inspiration that is the scary part. Admiral Kirby, thank you. Thank you so much. Ryan Brown, thank you both. Coming up next here on CNN, Miss America CEO in big trouble after a stunning series of emails was published by the Huffington Post. There is name-calling, fat-shaming, and what appears to be a coordinated attempt to retaliate against former Miss Americas who didn't toe the line. Two of the pageant's winners who were named in those emails join me live to respond.
Support for Anderson Cooper 360 comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, and your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. Rocket Mortgage is simple, allowing you to fully understand all the details and be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/AC360. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLSconsumeraccess.org number 3030. Remember, to create an ad like this one, visit purewinning.com/CNN.
A bombshell report involving the Miss America organization. This is revealing how some of the pageant's biggest stars were fat-shamed and humiliated behind the scenes. The Huffington Post, and Yashar Ali was the one who broke this, published several scathing emails exchanged between Miss America CEO Sam Haskell and other top officials. And the one raising all kinds of concerns is this, where he writes, "We are no longer going to call them forever Miss Americas. Please change all script copy to reflect that they are former Miss Americas." The official then responds, "I already changed forevers."
Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLSconsumeraccess.org number 3030. Remember, to create an ad like this one, visit purewinning.com/CNN.
A bombshell report involving the Miss America organization. This is revealing how some of the pageant's biggest stars were fat-shamed and humiliated behind the scenes. The Huffington Post, and Yashar Ali was the one who broke this, published several scathing emails exchanged between Miss America CEO Sam Haskell and other top officials. And the one raising all kinds of concerns is this, where he writes, "We are no longer going to call them forever Miss Americas. Please change all script copy to reflect that they are former Miss Americas." The official then responds, "I already changed forevers to the C word. Does that work for you?" And CEO Haskell responds, "Perfect. Bah, ha, 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 ha." Now, 49 former Miss Americas are calling for the organization's board members to resign immediately. Two of them are with me now. They are both the subjects of some of these malevolent emails. Kate Shindle, who was crowned in 1998. She is now president of the Actors Equity Association and the 2013 Miss America. Mallory Hagan is on the phone with me now. She is now an anchor at WLTZ in Columbus, Georgia. So, ladies, thank you to both of you.
Hi.
And Kate, let me just start with you. Hi. So, but Kate, All right, before we get to how all of this feels, and especially having it, so out there thanks to Yasher and HuffPo,
right.
how bad was it at the worst moments and times?
I'm not even sure we know how bad it was at the worst moments. I have a sneaking suspicion that this is the tip of the iceberg and there's more to come. I've heard conversations about all kinds of things across the spectrum, ranging from financial issues to different types of communication.
Well, what about you directly?
Oh, for me, the worst part was having to call my mom and say, hey, just so you know, there's an article that just posted where a bunch of people wished I was dead. What do we do with that? Oh, and by the way, they all work for the organization that taught me how to be a leader and an activist. But this is how they do it now.
How crushing was that to read that?
It was bad. It was bad. But, you can only go up from here, frankly. And I think that as long as they were going to say these things, I'm kind of glad they were dumb enough to put them in emails that could then become public.
Mallory?
Maybe I shouldn't say that.
No. Hey, you feel it, you say it. Mallory, how do you feel? What's the worst of it for you, directed at you?
I have to echo Kate, and no one wants to see the F word and their name in the same sentence in print, where someone's talking about your personal life in a way that they couldn't possibly understand your personal life. So to me, that's pretty bad, and I feel bad that this is happening, and the women that are a part of the Miss America organization are learning that this is how the organization is really run. But I'm very hopeful that there are going to be plenty of volunteers and former Miss Americas and former state title holders who stand up and say, as we've already seen, but who continue to stand up and say, this is not how we want to see this organization that we know and love run, and we're going to do better.
It's just disappointing because it looks like this beautiful, shiny, perfect organization and all smiles, and there are clearly cracks. There are cracks. I need to read this, though. This is, we reached out to all the Miss America officials mentioned in the story, and the organization responded with a statement. They say when they learned of these emails, they started an investigation, and that, quote, at the time in question, 3 to 4 years ago, Mr. Haskell was under unreasonable distress resulting from intense attacks on his family from disgruntled stakeholders. As a result, the board directed the organization to terminate the relationship with the most egregious author of inappropriate comments, a member of the television production staff. In addition, the board has started the process of instituting additional policies and procedures. The Miss America organization takes very seriously its reputation and the character and actions of its representatives and apologizes for any concerns or ill feelings the situation has caused. Moreover, the board of directors has and is taking affirmative action and has implemented specific policies and protocols to directly address this matter and to prevent any issues moving forward. And we should also say that the employee who was fired told the Huffington Post that he couldn't comment because of pending litigation, and a board member implicated in those emails has also resigned. All of that, though, that Mr. Haskell was under distress and they're apologizing. How does that statement sit with you?
Well, I mean, it's one of those I'm sorry if your feelings got hurt things. And, I don't really hear an apology in there. But the truth is there's no apology that covers this. They could apologize for the bad words. They could apologize for throwing around language that we all would agree was inappropriate in any environment. But you can't apologize for creating a toxic culture of abuse in which people are passing around a picture and making fun of a woman's weight, or conspiring. There's an email in which the board members are conspiring to crush Mallory's business and not allow her to be successful financially. They changed the rules of the pageant so that she couldn't help contestants by coaching. And so you can say you're sorry all you want, but until you take some ownership and maybe take a couple steps back, it's just words.
Here's what I thought, Mallory, when I read this piece this morning. I was wondering, just with everything happening with women right now, right, all of these voices being lifted, and I know some of this has happened long before this whole Me Too movement, with women speaking up. I'm just wondering, in terms of consequences, do you think what you're starting to see chip away at Miss America, perhaps you wouldn't have seen 6 months ago or even 6 years ago? What do you think?
I mean, I would like to hope that no matter when this came out, people would react the same way. This type of language is inexcusable no matter what industry you're in. And I've equated it today to, if this were the principal of your child's school, and your principal were sending around photos of a student and calling them, names or conspiring against them, you would immediately call for that principal to be fired. Hands down, no question asked. And so this situation isn't any different. And whether it's today or whether it was 6 months ago or whether it was 6 years ago, I would hope that people would understand that this is no way for a man who runs a women's empowerment organization to talk about the women who are a part of it.
Last question. How do you want young women to view this organization? Positive experience for you.
It was a positive experience for me, and I actually think it can still be a positive experience for a lot of other people. This board of directors needs to step down. But there are, as you mentioned, 49 Miss Americas as of this morning, and we have names being added by the hour who are calling for a change in leadership. The mayor of Atlantic City, there's now a petition with thousands of over 1,000 signatures from state and local title holders from years gone by and volunteers. I mean, we don't have an option. This has to change, and it can still be a great thing because I've experienced that and lived that. I know Mallory has too.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that the thing that I would just add to that is that the women who are part of this organization, they're strong, they're smart, they're independent, they're articulate, they're civic-minded, and there is a place for that in our society, despite what people may think about the outward appearance of a pageant. There are thousands of girls every year who benefit from this program, and there could be hundreds of thousands more with the right kind of leadership, and that's what we hope for.
Don't mess with former Miss Americas is my takeaway from this whole thing, ladies. Kate and Mallory, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Coming up next here, the short-term spending bill has passed, but it includes no mention of the hundreds of thousands of dreamers in this country. So we'll talk live to a member of Congress who has just confronted the Senate Minority Leader, Chuck Schumer, for failing to keep that promise.
Look, there's a broad feeling in our caucus that we want to see DACA taken care of before the end of the year. The Republican and Democratic negotiators in the Senate are making good progress, and I think that there's a lot, and 35 Republicans in the House signed a letter saying they want to get this done before the end of the year. So I think there's good bipartisan support to deal with DACA before the end of the year.
Hello there, I'm Alicia Malone, host of the Filmstruck podcast, a show made by film lovers for film lovers. Each episode, I sit down with the creative people behind today's movies to talk about their work and why they wanted to make movies in the first place. Subscribe today and listen wherever you get your podcasts. Bye!
Time is running out for nearly 700,000 undocumented young immigrants brought into the United States as children. Apparently, no immigration fix for dreamers is coming before the end of this year. Leading Democrats had promised to push for a solution and attach it to this week's stopgap spending bill, but that didn't happen. Members of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus walking out of the House yesterday and over to the Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer's office to get their message out of outrage. So let's talk it over with Illinois Congressman Luis Gutierrez, who led that walk over to Senator Schumer's office. Congressman, it's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you, Brooke, for having me on.
So I want you tell me, you set the record straight of what exactly happened in this meeting, because, reading the Washington Post today, they described the meeting as tense and heated, and, at one point you raised your voice at the Senate Minority Leader. You tell me what happened, sir.
Look, I guess it's surprising to the American public that elected officials, those who they sent to Washington, D.C., would speak with passion, with energy, and with commitment towards justice. But that's what happened yesterday. As you relate to us, time is running out. What's already run out, Brooke, for 13,000 dreamers. They're undocumented. They can be deported at any moment. They can't work legally in the United States. They've gone to school, right? They've gotten an education, and now they're being sent away from their classrooms where they're teachers or hospital where they're doctors. That's wrong. And so when I walk into a room, I want my Democrats to stand up for fairness and for justice, and I want them to do it energetically. And I'm going to demand that we do that as a party. I think that's the responsible thing to do. And I just want to say, look, I'm a dad. I'm a grandfather. I have 2 daughters. If they were at the same jeopardy that the dreamers, I'd want somebody to speak up forcefully for them. And I think That's all we did yesterday. Is what we say to you on CNN is what we say in the private room. Democrats stand up for the Dreamers because the Republicans are coming after them and Donald Trump wants to deport them, and we're the vehicle to defend them.
I appreciate the transparency, Congressman, and I hear you on being energetic and raising your voice when you need to. My question to you is, because it sounds like maybe you did do that, how did Senator Schumer react when you did that, when you confronted him?
Here's what we look, Brooke. It's a private meeting, and in a private meeting,
you just said you want to tell me about it.
Roll up your sleeve. Well, but look, Brooke. Here's what I will tell you. I spoke and I said to Leader Schumer, I really think you need to do more. And Democrats, not just him personally, but Democrats in the Senate. We did it in the House, Brooke, right? All the Democrats got together. We said no to the CR, to the continuing spending bill yesterday. Why? Because it didn't include a dream. We have to do the same thing in the Senate. Brooke, I've seen this. I've been in Congress 25 years. I've seen this movie before. I believe we need to get the CHIP program reauthorized. I believe we need to make sure that Medicaid and Medicare are there and properly funded. Look, I believe in those things, and I think we're going to get those things. What I want to make sure is that when the negotiations are ended, we don't say tomorrow to the Dreamers. We have to say today. They're losing 122, lose their status. By the time the 19th of January comes about, when the next spending bill ends, there'll be a few more thousand of them. Think about the peril that their lives are living in. So I'm just saying, I just said to Senator Schumer, we need to do more. Can I say something? We shook hands.
You did.
We shook hands. We took a photo together after the event. I said what I needed to say. He said what he. And here's what I put on Twitter at the end of the day. Dems are all on the same page. We're marching forward.
Do you then, last quick question, since you have been in office for many years and you've seen this movie play out before, when they say, this is all about January, right, bringing a bipartisan DACA bill for a vote in January, do you believe that will happen?
Here's what I believe. I believe the Democrats are on the same page. And I believe that while Republicans have paid a huge price because of their xenophobia, because of just their hatred towards immigrants in terms of all of their public policies, I want to tell the immigrant community they have champions and people that are on their side. I want my party to be on their side.
So you want a yes, but it sounds like I'm not hearing a yes or a no. So you still don't totally know.
Brooke, am I more optimistic after the meeting than before the meeting? Absolutely. Do I think that Chuck Schumer and I and Nancy Pelosi are going to work more closely and more strongly together to get it done? Absolutely. Absolutely. But Dreamers, keep the fight up.
Okay. Congressman Luis Gutierrez, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you.
Thank you, sir. Coming up next, a new report shows employees at the Environmental Protection Agency are leaving under this new administration, under President Trump. What the low morale and shrinking staff means for the important work the agency does.
I'm Lawrence Scott with NBA Sound System, and our latest episode here during the holidays is chock full of Southwest flavor as we hear from Mavericks rookie Dennis Smith Jr., plus dive deeper into a Q&A with longtime Slam Magazine staffer Svi Chwerski. Plus, Pelicans broadcaster Joel Myers joins us from New Orleans. Subscribe to NBA Sound System on Apple Podcasts, and to stream the show, visit our homepage at nba.com/soundsystem.
A mass exodus at the Environmental Protection Agency since President Trump took office. A report by the New York Times and ProPublica say more than 700 people, including 200 scientists, have left the agency. Most of these employees will not be replaced. But this is something the president warned about back on the campaign trail.
Department of Environmental Protection. We are going to get rid of it in almost every form. We're going to have little tidbits left, but we're going to take a tremendous amount out.
CNN's Justice correspondent Jessica Schneider is with me now. And so this is only a fraction, I suppose, of their goal to shrink the APA. But we are talking scientists, leaving en masse. Why? Tell me more.
Well, you know, Brooke, as you heard there from the president, this is all part of that broader goal from the administration to drain the swamp. It was back in April when EPA officials put out a memo saying that it did plan to streamline its workforce through buyouts. And that, of course, was after the president issued an executive order aimed at cutting back at agencies all across the board. But the report here from the New York Times, it points out that 700 people have left the EPA since President Trump took office, and that number includes more than 200 scientists. So the problem is, it appears that these scientists are not actually being replaced. According to the report, of the 129 people hired at the EPA this year, just 7, Brooke, were scientists. And of course, you know, it's the scientists that really have the knowledge to best protect the nation's air and water. So here's what the spokesman at the EPA says. I spoke with him at length today. He says we currently here have over 1,600 scientists at the EPA, and less than 200 chose to retire with full benefits. He continued on to say, with only 10 months left on the job, Administrator Pruitt is unequivocally doing more with less to hold polluters accountable and to protect our environment, referencing there to some actions taken in Texas and finding several Fortune 500 companies. You know, Brooke, the EPA spokesman, he also tells me, he explains it this way, saying that this is a natural progression. He says that 50% of EPA employees are eligible to retire over the next few years, 5 years in fact. But it really, Brooke, doesn't look like the EPA will be replacing a lot of them, all of this effort to scale back. And obviously a lot of concern at the EPA because of it. Brooke?
Jessica Schneider, thank you.
Thanks.
Justin, CNN confirming why President Trump did not hold a year-end news conference. It turns out the president wanted to answer questions from the press. Who told him no? That's coming up.
Hey, it's Howard Beck, and I've got the Lakers' Jordan Clarkson on Bleacher Report's The Full 48.
Byron Scott was a coach at the time, and I even asked him a few times, let me go down and play in the D-League. I'm tired of sitting on the bench, man. I want to go play. But I enjoyed my time in the D-League. Definitely helped me transition faster when I got to play in the league, and it really helped me.
So check out The Full 48 now on the Bleacher Report app or subscribe at Apple Podcasts.
A San Francisco police officer is credited with saving 9 lives, all because she donated a kidney. CNN's Stephanie Elam shows us how she went beyond the call of duty.
I listened to a story about a woman that donated through a website.
San Francisco police officer and Army veteran Anna Cuthbertson hadn't considered organ donation before.
It looks like personal ads, people that need different body parts. The more I looked into it, the more I realized that there wasn't a reason not to.
Instead, on the website, she found a very compelling reason why she should donate her kidney. Joan.
All along, she's been pretty miraculous.
Joan Grialis has kidney disease. For 5 years, she was on a wait list for a new one.
Someone in my kidney support group had heard about matching donors, so I found it online and I enrolled myself there. To my amazement, within an hour, Anna called me.
Joan is about the age that my mother would have been if she was alive. Joan's got kids that are about my age. And I just imagined if I had had my mom back, what would I have done to, how far would I have gone to have kept her?
Cuthbertson sees a correlation between her career in uniform and her desire to give.
I think that my time in law enforcement, my time in the military, I spent trying to make a difference to somebody. This was instant gratification for me.
During the months of testing, the women forged a bond.
Were you at all let down when you found out that she wasn't a match for you?
Yeah, I think she and I would have both liked that very much.
But by being part of a kidney pair donation program, other duos with the same problem were found so that matches could be made among them. In all, 9 people got a new kidney thanks to Anna's generosity.
You bring a good kidney to the table and suddenly a whole list of people are able to get a donation.
It's magical. It's things of which dreams are made and can bring tears to my eyes.
Joan's kidney came from an anonymous man in Southern California, but she considers Anna her donor.
I may not have gotten her kidney, but without her doing what she did, I wouldn't have gotten a kidney either. She has a big heart.
I'm Brooke Baldwin. Thanks for being with me. The Lead with Jake Tapper starts now.
Hey,
Before you go, we wanted to let you know that we just launched the ability for anyone to advertise on CNN podcasts. You're just a few clicks away from reaching millions of people in a way that you never have before. Advertise for a business, event, or kick off an awareness campaign for your brand. Start today at purewinning.com/CNN. Integrating podcasts into your marketing mix has never been easier. We'll even tell you how to save 15% on your CNN campaigns for the rest of 2017. Go to purewinning.com/CNN to get started.